I never thought the highway could feel like a hunting ground. Growing up, road trips meant adventure. My dad would pile us into his rusty Chevy Suburban, toss a cooler full of sodas in the back, and take us through winding back roads to fishing spots no GPS ever marked. I guess that's why, years later, I thought it was a good idea to plan a long drive across the country with my wife and our son. A family tradition, I told myself. A way to remind us of simpler times, before bills stacked high and stress lived in our bones. But tradition can turn sour, and sometimes the open road doesn't take you where you think it will. Chapter 1, The Plan. I'm David Romero, 36 years old, born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. I work construction, mostly residential framing. My wife Marisol is an elementary school teacher. She's the kind of person who can make friends in a grocery line and still remember the name of the cashier 3 weeks later. We've been married 12 years, long enough to see each other at our best and our absolute worst. Our boy Lucas is 9. Smart kid, restless, talks too much like me. He just finished third grade when Marisol suggested we do something big that summer, something unforgettable. He's old enough now to remember everything, she said one night, pushing a stack of graded papers aside on the kitchen table. Let's not waste these years, I laughed. What, like Disneyland? No, bigger. A road trip, real America. Canyons, mountains, towns with diners that still serve pie out of glass cases. It sounded crazy. Money was tight. My truck had more miles than I cared to admit. And I couldn't imagine being stuck in a car that long with Lucas asking 1,000 questions about clouds and road signs. But something about the way she said it, like she wanted to bottle a piece of life before it slipped away, made me agree. We spent 2 months planning. Marisol pored over maps and travel blogs. She made binders of reservations, campgrounds, cheap motels, points of interest. Lucas bought a spiral notebook from Walmart and called it his adventure journal. By early June 2021, we were packed and ready. Cooler in the back, snacks in grocery bags, a small toolbox in case of breakdowns, and our silver 2012 Toyota Highlander polished like it was brand new. My brother loaned me a portable jump starter. We had roadside assistance through our insurance. We thought of everything. Or so we believed. Chapter 2. The road begins. The morning we left, the Texas sun was still low, a pale orange bleeding into the horizon. Our neighborhood was quiet except for sprinklers ticking on lawns. I loaded the last bag into the trunk while Marisol checked the route on her phone. Lucas skipped circles around us, humming some cartoon theme song. David, Marisol called. Gas station before we hit I-10. Don't forget the ice. Already on it, I said, tossing the cooler lid shut. We drove west, spirits high, the radio tuned to a station that actually played Spanish ballads and country back to back. Lucas scribbled in his notebook, Day 1. We're finally doing it. By late afternoon, we were in New Mexico. We stopped at a rest area near Las Cruces, white concrete picnic tables under flat roofs, desert stretching forever. The air smelled like dust and sun-baked asphalt. Marisol passed out sandwiches she'd made the night before. Lucas chased a lizard across the gravel. Everything felt safe, ordinary. That first night we stayed in a modest motel, yellow walls, buzzing neon vacancy sign, bedspreads with floral prints straight from the 90s. Lucas bounced on the mattress until I told him he'd break the springs. We laughed. We planned the next day. It was exactly the road trip we'd dreamed of, until it wasn't. Chapter 3. Trouble in the Middle of Nowhere. 2 days later, we left Santa Fe, heading north toward Colorado. Marisol wanted to take a scenic route through the mountains instead of sticking to the interstate. Less traffic, prettier views, she said, pointing at the map. I hesitated. It's an extra hour. It's worth it. Trust me. So we took Highway 285, winding through lonely stretches of desert and hills dotted with scrub. The scenery was breathtaking, red cliffs, endless sky, but the farther we went, the fewer cars we saw. Around 3 p.m., about 50 miles from the nearest town, I felt a vibration in the steering wheel. At first I thought it was the road. Then came a grinding noise from the front left tire. Do you feel that? Marisol asked, frowning. Yeah, hold on. I slowed and pulled onto a gravel turnout near a faded sign about some historic stagecoach route. The heat slammed us when I stepped out. I crouched to check the tires. Nothing obvious. No flat, no bulge. I opened the hood, though I barely knew what to look for. Marisol shaded her eyes. Think we should call roadside? Maybe. Let me listen again. I drove a few hundred feet forward. The grinding came back, louder, like metal chewing itself. My stomach tightened. We couldn't risk blowing a wheel with Lucas in the car. I parked again. That's when a dusty blue pickup slowed and pulled in behind us. The driver stepped out, a man in his mid-40s, sun-leathered skin, baseball cap stained with sweat. He wore work jeans and scuffed boots. He walked with an easy confidence like he belonged to this land. Afternoon, he called, voice rough but friendly. Car trouble? Something like that, I said cautiously. He stuck out his hand. Name's Ray. Live a few miles down, ranch work. Mind if I take a look? Marisol glanced at me. I shrugged. We were stranded after all. Ray crouched by the tire, ran his hand along the rim, then tapped the wheel hub. Sounds like your bearing's going out. Dangerous if you keep driving. Wheel could seize up. Can it make it to town? I asked. He shook his head. Not safe. Best bet? I drive you to get a new bearing. I got tools. We'll fix it up right here. I didn't like the idea of leaving Marisol and Lucas alone. As if sensing that, Ray added, your wife and boy can ride in my truck with the AC. Safer than sitting out here in the heat. Marisol gave a polite smile. That's kind of you. But something about him unsettled me. His eyes lingered too long on her, then flicked toward Lucas. He asked where we were headed, how long we'd be traveling, where we planned to stay next. Questions that felt less like small talk and more like probing. When I stepped aside to call our roadside assistance, Ray moved closer to Marisol. I heard him say, you don't look old enough to have a 9-year-old. He's a handsome boy, though. Takes after you, I bet. Marisol stiffened. Lucas pressed against her side. My call connected. A dispatcher assured me a tow truck could reach us in 90 minutes. I returned. Help's on the way. Ray's smile faded. Tow truck's gonna cost you a fortune out here. No need. I can fix it. Been working on engines my whole life. Appreciate it, I said, forcing calm. But we'll wait. His jaw tightened. City folks don't trust locals, huh? Nothing like that, I replied. He stepped back, eyes dark. Suit yourself. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Things happen on these roads. Coyotes, strangers worse than me. He smirked, then climbed into his truck. But before leaving, he angled it so close to our bumper, we couldn't have pulled out, even if we tried. He sat there a moment, window rolled down, staring. Finally, he gunned the engine and drove off in a spray of gravel. Chapter 4. Waiting in Fear. Marisol shut her door quickly and locked it. David. That man. He was off. I know, Lucas whispered. I didn't like him. We waited with the AC running, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every time dust rose on the horizon. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. 90 minutes felt like a lifetime. When the tow truck finally appeared, I almost cried with relief. The driver, a middle-aged guy named Henry, wore a company uniform and showed ID before touching anything. He inspected the car, then laughed. Who told you it was a bearing? Some guy, I muttered. Not even close. Loose heat shield rattling against the wheel well. Simple fix. He tightened a few bolts. 15 minutes and you're good. I asked if a failing bearing could appear suddenly like that. He shook his head. Nope. That's gradual. Whoever told you that was full of it. I didn't tell him about Ray, about the way he looked at my wife, about how he blocked us in. But my gut told me that man didn't want to help. He wanted something else. Chapter 5. Echoes in the Dark. We made it safely to Colorado, but the mood of the trip had shifted. Marisol kept checking the mirrors. Lucas asked, what if that man comes back? He won't, I said, though I wasn't sure. That night, at a campground in the Rockies, Marisol scrolled her phone long after Lucas fell asleep. David, she whispered, showing me an article. Look. The headline read, 3 travelers missing near northern New Mexico highways. Last seen with local man offering roadside assistance. The description was vague, but one witness mentioned a blue pickup truck. I felt my stomach drop. Could it be him, she asked. I didn't answer. The rest of the trip felt shadowed, as though Ray's eyes followed us down every road. We avoided remote routes, stuck to interstates, double-locked motel doors. We made it home eventually, safe but different. Lucas stopped writing in his adventure journal after that day. When I asked why, he shrugged. It stopped being fun. Chapter 6. The Lesson. Months later, Marisol told me she still dreamed of that gravel turnout, of Ray leaning too close, of his voice promising danger. She woke sweaty, clutching the sheets. I tried to bury it, to tell myself nothing happened. But deep down, I knew something had. We had brushed against the kind of evil that waits for families like ours, out where help is far and trust can kill you. Now, whenever I drive long stretches of highway, I pack more than tools, I pack suspicion, because not every broken down car hides a mechanic's kindness. Sometimes it hides a predator's snare. I never thought a simple road trip could turn into the most haunting night of my life. It started on a Thursday afternoon in late September, the kind of day where the air carried the last warmth of summer, but the sky already hinted at autumn's chill. My name's Ryan Keller, 25 years old, originally from Spokane, Washington. I work as a junior architect at a small firm where deadlines keep me locked in front of blueprints until my eyes blur. My best friend, Ethan Morales, 24, is a physical therapist assistant in Los Angeles. We hadn't seen each other in almost a year. The reason we finally planned to reconnect was our college friend Liam Donovan's wedding in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A whole weekend of old friends, music, and the promise of a reunion that would feel like the good old days. Ethan and I decided to skip the flight. Instead, we'd make it a classic road trip, just like our college adventures, cutting across deserts, mountains, and endless highways. I drove up from Spokane to Boise, where Ethan flew in to meet me. We stocked my car, a silver 2012 Subaru Outback that had been my loyal companion through snowstorms and camping trips, with trail mix, jerky, a cooler of energy drinks, and a playlist we'd curated years ago. The first 2 days were perfect. We sang off-key, argued about basketball teams, stopped at hole-in-the-wall diners, and even pulled off once to take pictures of a rainbow stretching over the Wyoming plains. It felt like life before responsibilities, just two friends, a car, and the open road. By Friday night, though, the mood shifted. We were supposed to roll into Santa Fe by midnight, but a construction delay outside Rawlins, Wyoming, ate up hours. When we finally passed into northern New Mexico, the clock was pushing 11:40 p.m. My shoulders ached from hours of gripping the wheel. Ethan had been out cold for the last 3 hours, his head tilted against the seatbelt with little snores escaping. The dashboard clock glowed at me. 11:47 p.m. I blinked hard, rubbed my burning eyes, and forced them to focus on the dark ribbon of highway that seemed to stretch forever. The first wrong turn, the GPS mounted to my windshield chirped suddenly. In 2 miles, take exit 214 onto County Road 17. Estimated arrival time, 1:03 a.m. Shortcut, I muttered. Ethan stirred slightly but didn't wake. I studied the map. The device promised to shave 30 minutes off our arrival if I cut across some county roads instead of following I-25. 30 minutes felt like salvation. I was bone tired, and all I wanted was a motel bed before wedding festivities began in the morning. I took the exit. The road was narrow but paved, curving into open ranch land. For the first 10 minutes it was fine. Empty, quiet, just desert stretching in both directions under a spray of stars. Then the pavement started to crumble. Cracks widened, faded lines disappeared, and before long I was crunching over gravel. I frowned. This doesn't look like a county road anymore. Ethan mumbled awake, rubbing his eyes. Where are we? Supposed to be a shortcut. GPS says 28 miles until the next turn. He sat up straighter, peering out the window. Darkness pressed against the glass. No lights, no houses, just desert. Man, this is sketchy. You sure it's right? I held up the GPS. It says we're still en route, but in my gut, unease coiled. No signal 15 minutes later, Ethan pulled out his phone. No bars. What about you? I checked mine. Nothing. Only a hollow no service in the corner. Great. he muttered. We're officially in the twilight zone. I tried to laugh, but it came out forced. Relax, it's just remote. But deep inside, I wished I'd ignored the GPS and stayed on the interstate. It was Ethan who noticed first. He twisted in his seat, staring out the rear window. Hey, there's someone behind us. I glanced in the mirror. Two faint headlights glowed in the distance. Finally, I said, relieved. Another human being. But the relief didn't last. The headlights never closed the gap. They stayed exactly the same distance behind us, mile after mile. Too far to make out the vehicle. Too steady to be coincidence. Ethan's voice dropped. Why aren't they passing? I had no answer. The settlement. After what felt like forever, faint lights appeared ahead. A cluster of trailers and sheds surrounded a central bonfire. Music, low, twangy country, and voices carried across the desert air. Figures milled around the fire. Looks like a town, I whispered. More like a camp, Ethan said. His unease was obvious. I slowed near the edge of the settlement. The vehicle behind us rolled closer and stopped, idling 100 feet back. My chest tightened. Then 4 men walked toward us from the fire. Their silhouettes were sharp against the flames. 2 carried what looked like tools or weapons. Ethan gripped my arm. Ryan, don't roll the window down, don't. But one man stepped up and tapped on the glass. He wore a dirty baseball cap, his face shadowed but his eyes glinting in the light. His smile didn't reach those eyes. You boys lost? He asked. Yeah, I said carefully, cracking the window an inch. We're trying to get back to the interstate. He chuckled. Interstate's far from here. Easy to get turned around. Lucky for you, we can guide you. The others gathered closer. The man leaned in. Just follow our truck. We'll take you out. Everything in his tone told me it wasn't a request. Ethan whispered fiercely, Don't follow them. My gut screamed the same. I think we'll manage, I said, forcing a polite smile. The man's smile vanished. His jaw tightened. Not smart, city boy. Roads out here'll eat you alive. The other men shifted closer. Someone muttered, outsiders never learn. I didn't wait. I threw the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel, then spun and floored it back down the road. Shouts erupted behind us. Engines roared to life. The chase headlights flared in the mirror. Multiple vehicles. Pickups. They gained fast. Faster, Ryan, Ethan yelled, clutching the dashboard. I'm going as fast as this road lets me. The Subaru jolted over potholes, gravel spraying. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might split my ribs. Every turn, every shadow looked like the end. For 30 minutes they chased us. Every time I thought we'd lost them, fresh headlights appeared. My fuel gauge sank toward empty GPS, says we're close to the interstate. Ethan shouted. His voice was ragged. 2 miles. I gritted my teeth, eyes locked on the dark road ahead. One wrong move and we'd flip into the desert. Then, pavement. Glorious pavement. I gunned the engine, swerving onto the on-ramp of I-25. Semis thundered past. The pursuers didn't follow. Their headlights vanished into the night. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking so violently I could barely keep the wheel straight. We pulled into a brightly lit gas station half an hour later. Neither of us spoke for several minutes, just sat breathing, staring at each other. Finally, Ethan whispered, "What the hell was that place?" I had no answer. We never called the police. What would we say? That a group of strangers in the desert scared us? Without proof, we'd be laughed off. But later, when I couldn't sleep, I searched the area on my laptop. Articles popped up. Missing travelers, last seen near back roads in northern New Mexico. No bodies, just disappearances. I slammed the lid shut. We made it to Santa Fe the next morning, smiled for pictures, danced at Liam's wedding, pretended everything was fine. But sometimes when I'm driving alone at night and headlights appear in my rearview mirror, my chest seizes with that same fear. I'll never take a shortcut again. I always believed road trips were supposed to be about freedom. The music up loud, windows down, the kind of easy conversations you can only have when the miles roll by. I never thought one would end with me questioning whether Megan and I would live to see another day. Megan is my younger sister. I'm Daniel Reed, 27 at the time this happened, and Megan was 23. We were close, though we bickered like any siblings. I worked as a paramedic in Dayton, Ohio, pulling 12-hour shifts that left me wired and exhausted in equal measure. Megan had just graduated from Ohio State with a journalism degree and was in that restless in-between phase of life, bouncing between internships and job applications. Our cousin Emily was getting married in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Mom insisted we go. Dad couldn't get time off work, and money was too tight for flights, so the task fell on me to drive us the 10-plus hours south in my old Toyota Camry. At first, it sounded fun. A little road adventure, just the two of us. The morning we left, I loaded the car before sunrise, the air still cool and damp. Megan came out wrapped in a blanket, yawning, a travel mug in her hand. "You're insane for being cheerful this early," she muttered. "Not cheerful," I said, tossing her bag into the trunk. "Just caffeinated." She smirked and rolled her eyes, sliding into the passenger seat. The first few hours flew by. We joked about which relatives would get drunk at the wedding, argued over playlists, and shared snacks Megan had packed. The world outside was farmland and open skies. I felt good, like this was the kind of memory we'd look back on and laugh about. By mid-afternoon, though, after crossing into Tennessee, my body was screaming for a break. I downed too much coffee and water, and 6 hours behind the wheel left my bladder aching. "You okay?" Megan asked, noticing how I shifted in my seat. "Bathroom," I admitted. "Bad. Can you check the GPS?" She tapped on her phone. "Next gas station is 30 miles. But, oh wait, there's a rest area in 2 miles," relief flooded me. "Perfect." We saw the faded blue highway sign. "Rest area 2 miles." Megan frowned. "That sign looks old." "It's fine. 2 minutes, we're out." The access road curved through thick trees, shadows stretching across the pavement, even though it was still daylight. When the rest area came into view, I felt a twinge of unease. The building looked neglected. Peeling paint, boarded windows, several broken light poles. Only 2 vehicles sat in the lot, a battered Chevy pickup and a white cargo van with tinted windows. "This is creepy," Megan muttered. "Yeah," I admitted, "but I can't hold it." I parked near the entrance. The silence pressed in, heavy. Even the cicadas seemed distant. "I'll wait with you," Megan offered. "No, stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'll be quick." She hesitated, biting her lip, then nodded. "Shout if something's wrong." "Promise." I headed for the building. The restroom door was heavy, its small window painted black from the inside. I pushed it open and stepped into a dim corridor, lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb. Immediately, something felt wrong. The floor was bare concrete, not tile. The room stretched farther than expected, with a line of stalls on both sides, more like an industrial washroom than a highway stop. A faint humming sound came from somewhere deeper inside, mechanical and unsettling. I ducked into the first stall, hurrying. Then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, echoing against the concrete. I froze. "Everything okay in there?" A man's voice called. My pulse spiked. Who talks to strangers in a bathroom? "I'm fine," I answered quickly. Silence, then, "Where are you headed?" My stomach turned to ice. The voice was too close. I saw the shadow of boots under the stall. "Look, man, I'm good," I said, trying to keep calm. "Just about to leave." The boots shifted. "Come on out," the man said, his tone oddly casual. "I need you to see something." Every instinct screamed no. I flushed the toilet to make noise, then shoved the stall door open. A stocky man in a stained work shirt stood there. Mid-40s maybe. His smile was wrong, too forced, and his eyes were flat, predatory. "Bathroom's that way," I muttered, trying to move past him. He stepped sideways, blocking me. His hand twitched like he might grab me. Then another set of footsteps echoed from deeper inside. Another man appeared, also in work clothes, staring straight at me. My chest tightened. This wasn't random. "My sister's waiting outside," I said, forcing my voice steady. "She's expecting me any second." The first man tilted his head. "Pretty girl in the car?" Something inside me snapped. I shoved him hard, sprinting toward the exit. The second man lunged, but I ducked past, shoulder slamming into the heavy door. It burst open. "Megan!" I shouted. "Start the car!" She was already halfway out of the Camry, panic on. On her face, "Danny, what's... Get in the car!" Behind me, the men spilled out of the restroom. The driver of the pickup was approaching fast, and the cargo van's engine rumbled to life, figures moving behind the tinted glass. Megan dove into the passenger seat as I slid behind the wheel, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the keys. One of the men reached for my door handle just as the engine roared awake. I threw it into reverse, tires squealing. Someone slammed a hand against the trunk with a dull thud. Megan screamed, "Go! Go! Go!" she cried. I shifted into drive and gunned it down the access road. Gravel sprayed, the trees whipping past. In the rearview mirror, the van swung around, headlights blazing as it started after us. "Call 911, I shouted. Megan fumbled with her phone, voice trembling. I don't know where we are." "Tell them I-40 westbound, somewhere before Memphis. Rest stop. Tell them." Her voice cracked as she spoke to the dispatcher, giving as much detail as she could. I kept my eyes on the road, every nerve screaming as the white van gained speed behind us. "They're following us," she cried into the phone. "Please, send someone." I pushed the Camry as hard as it would go, heart hammering. Finally, the trees broke, and the blessed sight of the interstate opened ahead. I swerved back onto the highway, merging hard. Horns blared, but I didn't care. The van barreled onto the ramp behind us. For miles, it felt like a nightmare chase. My old Camry rattled at 90. Every second I expected the van to ram us. Megan clutched the door handle, tears streaking her cheeks as she relayed updates to the dispatcher. Then, red and blue lights. Up ahead, a patrol car waited in the median, siren blaring as it pulled out. The van's headlights flicked off. It slowed suddenly, then veered across the grass median and disappeared onto the eastbound lanes. Relief slammed into me so hard I nearly sobbed. At a gas station in the next town, we met with state police. I told them everything: the building, the men, the van. An officer listened grimly, shaking his head. "That's not a state rest area," he said. "Official ones are newer, marked, well lit. You stumbled onto something private. Could have been a front for trafficking." The words hit like ice water. They escorted us back toward the site. When we arrived, the lot was empty. The pickup and van gone. The building stood silent, abandoned. No sign of recent activity. The officer sighed. "These groups move fast. But you two are lucky, very lucky. That word rattled in my skull as Megan and I finished our drive to Arkansas in silence, too shaken to speak. It's been years since that day, but I still replay it in my head. The shadows under the stall, the flat, hungry eyes. Megan's scream as fists pounded our car. Now, whenever I travel, I plan every stop in advance. I only stop at well-lit, busy stations. I tell family exactly where I'll be and when. And I always keep my eyes open, because I know how close we came, how easily we could have been another missing persons case on the evening news. The memory of that abandoned rest stop stays with me, a reminder carved into my bones. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it waits on the side of the road, disguised as safety. I never imagined that retirement would lead me to the darkest night of my life. For 35 years, I taught high school history in Indianapolis. My wife, Claire, spent just as long working as a nurse in the city hospital. Our lives had been busy, noisy, and full of responsibility. 2 kids, a mortgage, aging parents, endless bills. We had promised each other that when we finally stepped away from work, we'd take the trip we'd been dreaming of since our 20s. A long road trip through the American West. By the summer after my retirement, both our children were grown and married, and we had no obligations tying us down. We sold the big house, packed our Subaru with camping gear and guidebooks, and set off with wide smiles and a playlist of songs from our youth. The first week was perfect. We hiked in the Rockies, marveled at the cliffs of Mesa Verde, and wandered through the small towns of New Mexico. Claire wrote in her leather journal every evening, recording little details, the names of campgrounds, the smell of pine trees after rain, the way the stars looked brighter than we had ever seen. But on the 10th day, everything began to unravel. We were driving through northern New Mexico on our way toward Durango when Claire spotted a brown roadside sign. Sage Hollow Scenic Overlook, 5 miles. It wasn't in her guidebook. She frowned, curious. Strange. This must be one of those hidden gems. What do you think? I was tired of the highway and eager for something different. Let's check it out. 5 miles won't hurt. The detour road was narrow but well paved, cutting through sandstone cliffs and winding among juniper trees. It was beautiful, almost too beautiful, like it had been staged. Claire leaned out the window, scribbling in her journal, smiling like a kid. But then came the noise. A harsh, grinding squeal from the front left wheel made my stomach drop. I slowed down immediately, heart thudding. Not good, Claire said, bracing herself against the dash. I pulled into a gravel turnout. Dust swirled around us. I got out, crouched, inspected the brakes. Nothing obvious, but the sound was bad enough to make me nervous. Claire stepped out, scanning the empty road. We don't have cell service, do we? I checked my phone. No bars. I shook my head. Dead zone. And that's when the white pickup truck appeared. It slowed as it reached us, and a man in his 50s rolled down the window. He had a tanned, weathered face, neatly combed hair, and a calm smile. You folks having trouble? He asked. Brake issues, I admitted. He parked and stepped out. Name's Richard. I'm the pastor over in a little place called Sage Hollow. Just up the road, Claire glanced at me. He looked harmless, kind even. Richard crouched by the wheel, running his hand along the rotor. Pads are worn down. Could fail on you if you keep driving the mountains. Lucky you stopped. Claire looked relieved. Do you think we can get help? Richard nodded. Our mechanic, Brother Joel, can fix you up. We've got parts, tools. Just follow me. Real slow. We're only a couple miles ahead, I hesitated. Something about his calm smile felt too perfect. But with no cell service and a grinding wheel, what choice did we have? We followed him. Sage Hollow appeared suddenly, nestled in a narrow valley. Modest houses lined dirt paths, solar panels gleamed on rooftops, and neat gardens stretched behind fences. Children played quietly near a stream. Too quietly. The people who saw us waved politely, but their eyes lingered too long. Richard led us to a workshop. A large man in grease-stained coveralls greeted us with a nod. This is Joel, Richard said. He'll get your car back in shape. Joel inspected the Subaru and confirmed Richard's words. Pads are gone. I'll need to replace them. You'll have to stay overnight, though. Takes time. Overnight? Claire asked sharply. Richard smiled warmly. Don't worry. We've got guest cabins. Comfortable. Safe. Claire's hand tightened around mine. Dinner was served in a communal hall. The food was hearty, vegetable stew, bread, tea, but the atmosphere was wrong. Every time Richard spoke, the room went silent. People nodded too eagerly, too obediently. During grace, Richard's tone changed. His voice, no longer friendly, rang with authority. He spoke about the emptiness of the outside world, about false freedoms, about how travelers like us were searching for something they didn't even realize they needed. And all the while, his eyes were fixed on us. Claire leaned toward me, whispering, "This feels like a cult." She was right. That night, in the cabin they provided, Claire refused to sleep. "We need to leave," she whispered. "Now." I tried to be rational. "The brakes aren't fixed. We can't drive out safely in the dark." She shook her head. "Mark, didn't you notice? The kids don't talk. Everyone stares at Richard like he's a god. And why would the brakes suddenly fail the moment we took this detour? What if they did something to the car?" Her words chilled me. Around midnight, I checked the Subaru. Joel had removed the pads entirely. The car was undrivable. We were trapped. The next day, things escalated. Richard invited us to attend morning fellowship. His voice was gentle, but his eyes said it wasn't optional. Inside a wooden hall, the community sat in silence while he preached. His words drilled into me, how the outside world was poisoned, how travelers found salvation here, how letting go of family ties and worldly possessions brought true freedom. And then he looked directly at me. "Some of you came here by chance," he said, "but there are no accidents. You were brought here." Claire gripped my hand, her nails digging into my skin. By evening, Joel told me more parts were needed from the next town, but it would take another day. I knew then that we'd never leave if we waited. Claire whispered in the dark, "We go tonight. Brakes or not." At 3 a.m., we packed quietly, heartbeats loud in the silence. We rolled the Subaru down the dirt path without starting the engine until we were far enough not to wake anyone. Then with a prayer, I turned the key and drove. The brakes screamed but held barely. We crept down the winding road, every shadow looking like a figure. When we finally reached the main highway, the relief made me dizzy. We drove on rims and prayers until we found a gas station at dawn. The mechanic there examined our car, then frowned deeply. "These pads didn't wear out naturally," he said. "Someone tampered with them." Claire and I exchanged a look. Neither of us said a word. We reported everything to state authorities later that day. They told us we weren't the first. Sage Hollow was already under investigation for missing travelers, financial scams, coercive practices. Our story added fuel to the case. Even now, months later, I wake in the night to the memory of Richard's eyes watching us across that dinner table. Calm, kind, and terrifying. Claire closed her journal after that night. She said some memories don't deserve to be written down. And I agree. I've always believed the highway is the most honest place in America. You see people stripped down to their pure selves out there, impatient, kind, reckless, generous, selfish, desperate. The road doesn't lie. Maybe that's why I like driving so much. It gave me time to think, to be alone, to measure people by how they handled 2 tons of steel at 70 miles an hour. But all it takes is one wrong person on the road to change everything. My name is Matthew Reed. I'm 34 years old, married to a woman named Claire, and for the past 7 years I've worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep. That means constant travel, 6, sometimes 7 hours of driving between hospitals, clinics, and doctors' offices. I rack up over 30,000 miles a year. I used to joke that my Honda Accord knew the way better than I did. That joke stopped being funny last winter. The day it all began was a Thursday in late November. The morning was cool, gray, and dry. One of those days where the sun hides but the air feels sharp and alive. I kissed Claire goodbye before leaving our small house in Denver. She stood in the doorway with her mug of tea, hair wrapped in a messy bun, looking half asleep but still worried. She always worried when I left. "Call me at lunch," she said. "I will," I promised, "and text when I stop for gas." "Be careful, Matt." I smiled, tossed my overnight bag in the backseat, and gave her a quick wave. Always. If I'd known what was waiting for me on that highway, I would have held her longer. My destination was Amarillo, Texas. A hospital system there had shown interest in our company's new infusion pump software, and my boss wanted me to pitch in person. It was a 6-hour drive, maybe 7 if traffic got ugly. I'd done the route before, south on Interstate 25, cut across near Raton, then east on US 87 straight into Texas. I set out around 8:15 a.m., thermos of coffee in the cup holder, audiobook playing through the speakers. The roads out of Denver were busy but not bad. By the time I passed Colorado Springs, things had thinned out, the Rockies shrinking behind me. Driving for me always started with a rhythm. Cruise control at 72, eyes scanning the mirrors, left hand resting light on the wheel. The audiobook droned on about negotiation techniques, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about Claire, about how we'd been talking about kids, about the mortgage, about whether I'd make it home in time for her cousin's wedding that weekend. Normal thoughts, ordinary thoughts. Ordinary doesn't last forever. I stopped for gas just outside Trinidad near the New Mexico border. It was a small station, the kind with 2 pumps and a faded sign, half the bulbs burned out. I didn't need much fuel, but I liked topping off before long stretches of empty road. As I got out, I noticed a black Ford F-150 parked off to the side. Dusty, dented Nevada plates. A man leaned against the driver's side, smoking. He was broad-shouldered, maybe mid-40s, with a dark ball cap pulled low. He didn't look away when I glanced at him. For some reason, that stuck with me. Most people either nod politely or ignore you at gas stations. This guy just stared, not in a curious way, in a fixed way, like he was memorizing me. I paid, grabbed a candy bar inside, and left quickly. When I pulled back onto a 25, the black truck was still in my mirror. At first, I thought nothing of it. Plenty of cars leave the same stations at the same time. But an hour later, near Raton, he was still there. Always a few cars behind. Always steady. Coincidence, I told myself. Don't overthink it. Still, I check my mirrors more often. South of Raton, the landscape flattens into endless plains. The highway feels like it stretches into infinity, nothing but straight asphalt and wind. I just switched my audiobook to music when I realized the black truck had closed the distance. He was behind me now, too close. I eased into the right lane, hoping he'd pass. He didn't. Instead, he matched my speed. I slowed down. He slowed down. My chest tightened. Okay, I muttered. You win. Go around. But he didn't. He just stayed there, close enough that his headlights filled my mirrors. For the next 15 minutes, my pulse thudded in my ears. Every time I glanced back, I saw him. Hat low, hands on the wheel, eyes hidden behind the glare of glass. Finally, I took the next exit toward a little town called Clayton. I figured if he kept going straight, I'd know it was just paranoia. Except when I curved down the ramp, he followed. My stomach turned to ice. Clayton was quiet. A few gas stations, a diner, a scattering of houses. I drove through town slowly, heart pounding, pretending I was just looking for food. The truck shadowed every turn. I circled back toward the highway, telling myself maybe he lived here. Maybe this was coincidence. But when I merged onto US 87 eastbound, he merged too, right behind me again. This wasn't coincidence, this was pursuit. I tapped the steering wheel control. Call Claire. Her voice came on after 2 rings. Hey, how's the road? I hesitated. Claire, there's a guy in a truck. Black Ford. He's been following me since Trinidad. Following you? Like, are you sure? Yes, he's on me right now. Won't pass, won't back off. I don't know what to do. Her tone sharpened instantly. Matt, listen to me. Get to the nearest police station, or at least a crowded place. Don't try to handle this alone. I know, I glanced at the mirror. He was still there. My throat went dry. I'll call you back. I hung up. My hands were slick with sweat, and the highway ahead was nothing but empty plains. For the next 30 miles, he stuck to me like glue. Every attempt I made to shake him, speeding up, slowing down, changing lanes, he mirrored. At one point, he flashed his high beams 3 times in quick bursts, then laid on the horn. The sound rattled my skull. Adrenaline surged. I pressed harder on the gas. My Accord hit 85, then 90. He matched me, staying just a car length behind. I thought about calling 911, but I'd heard horror stories about dead zones on this stretch. Still, I tried. I tapped my phone. The call failed, no signal. God, no, I whispered. The road stretched on, endless, empty, merciless, and the black truck hunted me. I never thought something as ordinary as a weekend road trip could change the way I look at people, cars, or even silence itself. My name is Ethan Carter, and this story happened not too long ago, though it feels like an entire lifetime away. For context, I'm 29, living in Salt Lake City, Utah, and working as a systems analyst at a logistics company. It's not a glamorous job, but it pays well enough and keeps me chained to my desk for far too many hours a week. My girlfriend, Lily Harper, is 27 and works as a freelance photographer. She's the kind of person who can't sit still, always chasing sunsets, always framing the world through her lens. We're opposites in many ways. I'm analytical, careful, always double-checking locks and making backup plans, while she trusts her instincts and thrives on spontaneity. We'd been talking for months about taking a proper trip together. Not just a day hike, not just a drive into the Wasatch, but a real escape from the city, somewhere we could unplug and actually breathe. We settled on a weekend trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, with plans to explore Grand Teton National Park. For Lily, it was about the photography opportunities, the jagged peaks, the alpine lakes, the possibility of wildlife. For me, it was about disconnecting from spreadsheets, servers, and emails. We picked the weekend after Labor Day, hoping to avoid the heavy tourist rush, but still catch the tail end of summer warmth before the snow started creeping back into the high country. Friday afternoon, I picked up our rental because my old Honda Civic wasn't exactly road trip material. I wanted something sturdy, something I could trust on mountain roads. The agency gave me a black Ford Explorer, spotless inside and smelling faintly of citrus cleaner. I remember running my hand over the hood like I was greeting an old friend. "Perfect," Lily had said when I drove up to her apartment. She came down lugging her camera bag, a duffel, and a cooler she insisted on packing herself. "We're going to live off hummus, trail mix, and sparkling water," she joked as she wedged the cooler behind the driver's seat. I handled the practical stuff, checking the jack, spare tire, and emergency kit. Lily teased me for being paranoid, but I noticed the way she watched, maybe a little reassured, even if she wouldn't admit it. By Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. sharp, we were on the road. The early light painted the valley in gold, and for a while, everything felt exactly like we'd imagined. Music playing low, Lily snapping photos of the highway disappearing into the horizon, me finally letting the knots in my shoulders loosen. We stopped in Evanston for gas and coffee, then again near Star Valley to stretch our legs. Lily bought a small dream catcher from a roadside gift shop, insisting it would keep bad vibes away. If only it had, because by the time we rolled into Alpine and turned north along the Snake River, I started to notice something. Nothing obvious, just a sound, a faint shuffle, like fabric brushing against fabric, coming from the back of the Explorer. At first I thought it was just our bags shifting. The cooler wasn't packed tight, and Lily's tripod had already clattered once on a sharp turn. But when Lily looked up from her camera and frowned, I knew she'd heard it too. "Did you hear that?" she asked. "Probably just the cooler," I said, trying to sound casual. My hand tightened on the steering wheel anyway. "No, it sounded different. Like slower, more deliberate." We exchanged a look. Neither of us wanted to say what we were both thinking. Still, I pulled into the next scenic turnout, a gravel pull-off overlooking the river. The air was crisp, the water glittering under the morning sun. A few other cars were parked, but no one was close enough to notice us. "Let's check," I said, already feeling my heart rate climb. We opened the rear hatch together. At first, everything looked fine. The duffel, cooler, camera bag, all exactly where we'd left them. But then Lily froze, pointing at something wedged beside her tripod. It was an empty granola bar wrapper, not the brand we'd packed. I remember the way my stomach dropped. I knew every item we'd loaded. Lily did too. And that wrapper? It wasn't ours. I dug deeper, pushing aside the cooler, and my hand brushed something else. A plastic water bottle, half empty, a brand neither of us ever bought. The cap was still wet, like it had been opened recently. "Ethan," Lily whispered, her voice shaking now. "Someone's been in here." I turned, scanning the turnout, half expecting to see someone watching us from the trees. But the lot was quiet, just the rush of the river below. Then I noticed something else. The back seat, the one behind the passenger side, wasn't fully latched upright. It had been folded down slightly, just enough to create a gap into the cargo area. My skin went cold. "Lily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Get in the front seat. Lock the door." "What about just do it?" She obeyed, fumbling with the keys to hit the lock button. Meanwhile, I grabbed the tire iron from the emergency kit and edged toward the rear passenger door. My heart pounded so loud it felt like whoever was back there could hear it. I yanked the door open. For a moment, nothing. Just shadows, bags, the faint smell of citrus cleaner mixing with something else. Sweat, maybe. Then movement. A man unfolded himself from the narrow gap, slow and deliberate. He was thin, in his mid-30s maybe, wearing a torn gray hoodie and jeans stained with dirt. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils wide, and in his hand, God in his hand, was a knife. "Don't do anything stupid," he rasped, his voice cracked and dry. "I just need a ride." Lily screamed from the front seat. The man's gaze snapped toward her, then back to me. "Keys. Money. Now, or she gets cut." I don't remember deciding to move, but my grip tightened on the tire iron. My whole body felt like it was vibrating, adrenaline pushing me past fear into something raw and sharp. But before I could act, Lily did. From the driver's seat, she whipped out the bear spray she always carried for hikes and aimed through the gap between the seats. She hit him square in the face. The man shrieked, dropping the knife as he clawed at his eyes. I surged forward, slamming the tire iron against his arm, then his shoulder. He crumpled sideways, choking and gasping, blinded by the spray. "Rope!" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "In the gear bag! Get the rope!" Lily scrambled, tossing it to me. Together we bound his wrists and ankles, ignoring his curses and sputtered threats. By the time we were done, he was writhing helplessly on the gravel beside the Explorer, eyes swollen, face streaked with tears from the spray. We drove straight to Jackson, hands shaking, hearts racing, and pulled into the sheriff's station like we were fleeing a war zone. Deputies rushed out, and within minutes the man was in custody. Turned out he'd been targeting tourists for months, sneaking into rental lots, hiding in SUVs until they left the city. Most people never realized until it was too late. Some had been robbed, some worse. We were lucky. No, we were prepared, even if we hadn't known it. My tire iron, Lily's bear spray, both had saved us. The rest of the weekend was a blur of statements, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Jackson Hole was beautiful, but I barely saw it. All I could think about was the sound of fabric shifting in the back of the Explorer. The moment I realized we weren't alone. Even now, months later, when I rent a car, I check every corner, every latch, every hidden space. And Lily, she still takes photos, still chases sunsets, but she never travels without that can of bear spray. We survived, but we also changed. And maybe that's the price of safety, the knowledge that danger can be as close as the seat behind you. Isabel Turner had always been proud of her independence. At 31, she had built a solid career as a financial consultant in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her work demanded frequent travel across the southern states, often requiring overnight stays in small towns where large hotel chains hadn't yet expanded. Isabel's friends often teased her about being too fearless for a woman traveling alone, but she dismissed their worries with a laugh. "I know what I'm doing," she'd tell them. "I've been on the road enough to recognize trouble when I see it." But deep down, she knew a part of her confidence came from habit, not invincibility. She had developed routines, choosing motels near populated areas, double-locking doors, keeping pepper spray in her bag. Still, Isabel loved the solitude of driving. The long stretches of highway gave her time to think, to decompress from numbers, clients, and endless financial spreadsheets. Her latest trip was to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where she was scheduled to attend a 2-day client workshop. She left Charlotte early on a Thursday morning, planning to break the journey into 2 days of driving. Her route took her through the quieter backroads of Mississippi, which she preferred over crowded interstates. But the weather had other plans. By late evening, Isabel was halfway across rural Mississippi when the sky turned bruised purple. The forecast had mentioned scattered thunderstorms, but the storm that hit was anything but scattered. Winds howled across the open fields, bending trees sideways while rain battered her windshield so hard that her wipers could barely keep up. "Shit," she muttered, tightening her grip on the wheel. Her phone buzzed with an emergency weather alert. Severe storm warning. Flash flood conditions. Non-essential travel discouraged. The road ahead was nearly invisible. To her left, she thought she saw the outline of a wrecked pickup truck, hazard lights blinking weakly in the downpour. Traffic had thinned until she was driving alone through sheets of water that turned the asphalt into a mirror. Pulling over wasn't an option. The shoulders were flooded. Continuing forward felt reckless. That was when the glowing letters appeared through the storm. Vacancy, Pine Haven Motor Lodge. The neon sign flickered red and green in the rain like a heartbeat. Relief surged through Isabel. She didn't care if it was outdated or cheap. She just needed somewhere safe, dry, and warm until the storm passed. She turned into the cracked driveway, tires splashing through puddles, and parked in front of the office. The motor lodge consisted of a single row of 20 rooms, their doors opening onto a central parking lot. A faint light glowed in only a handful of windows. Isabel shut off her engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain drum on the roof of her car. Something about the place looked frozen in time. The paint on the doors was peeling, and the sign above the office sagged, its letters missing bulbs. But what choice did she have? She grabbed her overnight bag and laptop case, pulling her jacket hood tight before sprinting through the rain to the office. Inside, the air smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette smoke. A television on the counter played an old news channel with the sound muted. The room was dim, lit only by a single buzzing fluorescent light. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 50s. His thinning blonde hair was combed straight back, and his pale face carried a permanent half-smile that never reached his eyes. His name tag read Warren. "Well now," Warren drawled, leaning forward. "Quite the night to be driving." "Where are you headed, miss?" "Baton Rouge," Isabel said, setting her bag down carefully. "But the storm's too rough." "Do you have a room available?" "Sure do. Always happy to help travelers stuck in this weather. Dangerous out there, real dangerous." He slid a form toward her. His eyes scanned her closely, lingering longer than necessary. Isabel kept her tone polite but clipped. "I'll just need one night," she said. "That's what most people say." Warren chuckled softly. "Rates 60 even. Cash or card?" "Card." As she handed it over, Warren tilted his head. "You from Charlotte, right?" "Saw it on the license." "Yeah," Isabel said slowly. "Pretty city. Lively. Lot of good-looking folks there," Warren added with the same half-smile. Her unease stirred. She reminded herself she had stayed at plenty of sketchy motels before. Just one night. Warren slid her card back and handed her an old-fashioned brass key attached to a block of wood labeled Room 12. "End of the row. Nice and quiet." He leaned closer. "If you need anything at all, just holler. I'm always around." The hallway outside smelled faintly of wet carpet. Isabel unlocked Room 12 and stepped inside. The room looked cleaner than she expected, but dated. Patterned bedspread, buzzing lamp, cracked mirror above a dresser. The curtains were drawn shut, thick and heavy enough to block all light. "Not bad," she whispered, dropping her bag on the bed. But as she set her laptop on the desk, her eyes caught something unsettling. Near the base of the wall opposite the bed, a tiny hole the size of a dime. Too smooth to be damaged. Deliberate. She knelt, peering closer. Beyond the hole was only darkness. She shivered. Don't overthink. Old buildings have weird damage. Still, she dragged the dresser in front of it. Exhaustion from driving and stress pressed against her temples. She texted her best friend Leah a quick update. "Greater than storm bad. Found a motel. We'll check in with you in the morning." She turned the lock on the door, double-checked the chain, then collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Rain pounded the roof like fists. Isabel must have drifted off because the next thing she registered was voices. Low, male, right outside her window. She froze. "She's a pretty one," one voice muttered. "Room 12? Another asked. A pause. Then Warren's unmistakable drawl. "Yeah, end of the row. Don't rush it. Storm will keep her here all night." Her heart slammed in her chest. She sat up, listening hard. Footsteps crunched in the gravel outside, then faded toward the office. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone. She considered calling 911. But what would she even say? That the manager and some man had been talking about her outside her window? Would police come out in a storm for that? Stay calm. Make a plan. She quietly stuffed her belongings back into her bag. When she reached the bathroom, her eyes caught something chilling. The frosted glass window above the tub wasn't painted shut like the main window, but it bore fresh pry marks on the frame. Someone had tried to open it recently. Her throat tightened. She lifted the window slowly. It creaked but opened just wide enough for her to squeeze through. She lowered herself carefully, feet splashing into mud behind the building. The rain soaked her instantly, but she felt freer out here than inside that room. She crouched low and scanned the lot. Warren and the other man weren't visible. Her car sat 3 doors down. Keeping close to the building, she moved. That was when she saw it, through a crack in another room's curtains. A camera mounted on a tripod pointed directly at the bed. Her stomach lurched. She stumbled back, nearly slipping in the mud. Room after room, she noticed subtle details: drilled holes, covered windows, faint blue light spilling under doors. It wasn't just one room. The whole place was wired. She reached her car, fumbling with the keys. Just as she pulled the handle, movement flashed in her headlights. Warren stood in the rain, 10 feet away. His half-smile was gone, replaced with something darker. In his hand was a crowbar. "Going somewhere," he called over the storm. Isabel dove into her car and slammed the lock button. Warren rushed forward, raising the crowbar. She started the engine, throwing the car in reverse as the crowbar smashed against the driver's side window with a deafening crack. The glass splintered but held. Tires spun in the mud before catching traction. Isabel shot backward, swerving around Warren and tearing out of the lot onto the dark highway. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She didn't look back, didn't dare slow down until neon lights from a gas station appeared miles ahead. Inside, she locked herself in the restroom and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The police response was swift. By the next morning, Pine Haven Motor Lodge was swarming with state investigators. Isabel gave her statement, every detail spilling out. Inside the rooms, police discovered cameras wired to a central monitor hidden in the office. The storage closet held women's purses, clothing, and IDs, souvenirs from victims. Warren and his accomplice, identified as his cousin, were arrested trying to flee town. Investigators linked the motel to several missing person cases spanning years. Some women had vanished entirely after stopping there. Isabel's escape and her courage to report cracked the case wide open. In the months that followed, Isabel never traveled the same way again. She booked hotels in advance, avoided isolated roadside lodgings, and always shared her location with family. She also began speaking at women's safety seminars, telling her story not to frighten, but to prepare. Because sometimes the scariest monsters weren't on dark highways. They were waiting behind neon vacancy signs.